And
Can to present the waiting room as needed.
okay. Oh, and then I think you can actually turn off the waiting room.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name's CK. I will be moderating this panel on preserving the recordings of the UN, Yugoslavia, and Rwanda criminal trial, presented by David Rowntree, who is the digital preservation librarian at the University of Hawaii at Manila's Hamilton Library, right on campus where we're located. And I will let him take it away. Oh, I'd like to remind everyone, this session is being recorded.
Thank you, CK. So I will not use the microphone if that's okay. If you need to, if you can't hear me, just let me know and I will turn it on there. Welcome everyone. So as CK mentioned, my name is David Rowntree. I'm the digital preservation librarian here at Hamilton Library on campus. Some of you may be going to on the tour tomorrow. But what I'm going to talk about today are the 10 years prior to me arriving here in Hawaii, where I worked at the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals in The Hague, Netherlands. So I'm going to go through those 10 years in about 20 minutes. And so I'll just give you a little bit of context. I'll talk about the courtroom recording process and the work that we did to essentially the work that we did to make those accessible, which was actually quite complex and complicated and is still ongoing. So even recordings that happened 20 years ago are still not yet public. So I'll talk about that. I do have a couple videos, and just to be more efficient, I'll play them at the end rather than switching back and forth between the videos and the presentation itself. So, but I'll mention them and then I'll play them at the end of the session. And there should be a few questions, enough time as well for questions at the end. So the IRMCT, the acronym for the residual mechanism, is a combination of the ICTY, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Those are two separate tribunals, one based in Arusha, the other one in The Hague. And in 2012, The two of them were combined. They were always set up to be temporary organizations. And as the courtroom proceedings started to wind down, the two tribunals were combined into the mechanism. And so we had two branches. The first branch, the branch in Arusha, Tanzania, held and was responsible for the recordings of the Rwanda Tribunal. And the branch in The Hague, where I worked, was responsible for the recordings of ICTY. Sorry. So just give you some context, because these were groundbreaking tribunals. They were the first tribunals since World War II, and they were very important and significant in terms of the jurisprudence that came out of these tribunals as well. They're first to deliver verdicts in relation to genocide, to define rape in international criminal law and recognize it as a means of perpetrating genocide. An interesting one as well is the first to hold members of media responsible for broadcasts to inflame the public, as you know, the radio station in Rwanda and Figurelli. Other important distinctions as well in accomplishments of the tribunals. Sexual violence was recognized as a war crime. Crime against religious and heritage buildings and sites was recognized as crimes against humanity. And the ICTY was always proud of this fact because there was always competing claims of truth and what was real, and as the different sort of factions were competing for their versions of the story, the ICTY established fact in terms of what happened on the ground in the courtroom as well, beyond a reasonable doubt. The tribunals as well, Slobodan Milosevic, the first head of state since World War II to be held, to be brought to trial. As well, military leaders, Ratko Mladic, the butcher of Bosnia, brought in. And again, you see the defiance of the people being brought in. Here, he's known to sort of intimidate the witnesses in the courtroom as well. So that is him doing that, but that is him there at the end after his verdict of guilty has been read. When the tribunals were being set up, it was very important that there was transparency in the process. So those setting up the tribunal wanted the proceedings to be seen, heard around the world, and particularly to the regions, the affected regions. And so they decided that they were going to have cameras in the courtroom. And at that time, okay. At that time, this was not a common practice in the courtroom. So they looked around to see who was doing this, where they could get some guidelines. There were a few parliamentarian proceedings around the world, but they actually, interesting, went to court TV, because at the time the O.J. Simpson trial had just happened. And so they actually used documentation and guidelines from court TV to help inform their practices, and then adjusted it accordingly to their own needs. But it was an interesting sort of source to sort of help set this up. So I will play just, as I mentioned at the end, a short little clip. Witnesses were incredibly important to the proceedings, and I believe I may have the number later. I think there's upwards of like 12,000 witnesses that came in to the different, to the two tribunals. So in establishing this, the recording, so it was at the time, again, it was very complex. There's a lot of demands, and that needed to be accommodated. So the proceedings, there was a live broadcast. However, there was a 30-minute delay, and within that 30-minute delay, it allowed for there to capture any sort of confidential information that may have been, mistakenly spoken in court or shown in court. That allowed the directors to redact that before it went out. There were interpreters booths, so this was simultaneously interpreted in the different languages, and I'll get into that in a second. There were 6 cameras set up with different angles throughout the courtroom as well. One focused on the bench, one on the prosecutors, one on defense. It also incorporated the ability to have witnesses with remote testimony. So there's a lot of people, were fearful to come in to the courtrooms, and so they accommodated them where they were. And there's a number of protection measures as well, and I'll touch upon those in a minute. Okay, so there you go. So we got over 7,000 witnesses. Over 2,200 of them had protection measures of some sort: face protection, voice protection, pseudonyms. There's also a closed session and private session. Closed session meaning that there were public galleries in the courtroom, so you could go in person and to watch the proceedings. But if there was some confidential information we discussed, the private sessions would, the closed sessions would be, the drapes would be closed, so you could not see. And private sessions also meant that there was no audio. So these were some of the measures that they, because protecting the witnesses, at the time the tribunal started, there was still conflict and war going on in the former Yugoslavia at that time. So protecting the witnesses was of paramount importance. What is unique about these recordings? The official languages were in The Hague was English and French, but the courtroom was set up that it accommodate any language that was being spoken in the court at the time. They would have interpreters come in for that. So the recordings were unique in that the witnesses and a lot of the discussions were in the local languages, and so the transcripts did not have that. They were recorded, transcribed in English and French. So it was the AV materials that had the local languages. And so this is very unique and a very important component of the recordings and of that process. Again, as you know, having the cameras as well just allowed so much more insight into what was happening. So one, you could see the proceedings, but you could see sorry, so I do touch upon this as well, the sort of secondary trauma. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Take your time.
So, but the video just provides so much more rich experience. You can see the witnesses. So, and I will go back to the first case. So it's 30 years ago. The first trial started, so that was recognized this year. So, okay, this will settle me down and talk about the workflows. So, no, it's fine. All right, so as I mentioned, the tribunal started in the 1990s, and so analog was the primary recording process. So it did start with 2-channel VHS, and each of the as I mentioned, the languages were recorded because there was 4 channels being recorded. Each language was recorded separately onto other cassette tapes. So you had the floor channel, which recorded anything that was spoken, any language spoken in the courtroom. You had English, French, and then in The Hague you had BCS, and in Arusha you had Kinyarwanda. So a typical hearing day, it could be a 30-minute long session, or it could run the entire day. And so you could have 1 tape, you could have 2 tapes or 3 tapes, a number of tapes, however long it took. And so when we started, when this was we began digitizing it, we saw a whole variety of sort of ways things were done. Some tapes, audio cassettes, had both sides recorded on, some didn't. you had sessions overlapping on different cassettes. And so just reassembling that in the order in which it occurred in the courtroom was also a challenge. You had the full versions. So this is fully unredacted. So everything was recorded. And then there's protection, there's ways to make things private to redact as well. So you had public versions. So in a hearing day, as I said, you may have like 3 sessions in a day, which meant you have all of these tapes. And when you digitize it, you get a whole variety of sort of files as well. At the height of the tribunals, there were 3 courtrooms simultaneously running, all producing, these vast quantities of tapes. So fortunately, what they did move off of VHS and went to DV cam, where the audio was then recorded directly onto the tape itself, as opposed to separately onto cassettes. And they did have some backup on a terrible format, FTRs. But here's just to give you a sense of the scale and of material. So there's over 150,000 tapes and cassettes in the tribunals, and we estimate over 2 petabytes of recordings. So the challenges we had, again, to make this public, because you can see the requirements and demands for this material, or to protect the witnesses. We would see all kinds of things happening. So there's, reflections in glasses, the camera on a certain angle, a glass, the window or something like that, you get a reflection and you could actually see the witness in the reflection. And like, okay, you didn't account for that, but this is something we see you'd have to deal with. Initially, the facial distortion was only just the face itself, but you could see the person's arms. And so realizing that, if you're bringing in somebody from a small town in Bosnia, they may be recognized by your watch or a ring or some, suit or garment that they're wearing. So early recordings had just the face, but then, once we realized that this was an issue as well, it changed. And so there was a lot of evolution of changing of this sort of things that need to happen to protect the witnesses. Again, as we're going through these things, this was for the purpose of making this accessible. You were seeing things like in one particular courtroom, as witnesses would come in and out, they would have a sort of wide angle shot, but they would catch the witness walking across that. So the protection measures were in place for the person once they're in their seat, but you'd see them walking across the camera as they come in. Sometimes confidential photos were shown. So if they were held up to show the witness, and you could see the witness handing it or looking at things. And so again, you'd see images of a photo that was being shown pop up. Other things like leakage. So there was, as I mentioned, there's a simultaneous translation in the translation booths. But the way that they would translate is that they would have the headphones on, but they would have just one headphone on. And so what was happening was that the sound of the other headphone was leaking into their microphone. And so if they turned it off, it was fine. It wouldn't get picked up. But if they turned it on and were pausing before speaking, then it would get picked up. So you had this sort of leakage happening on the recordings. And so if you're watching it, where there is a pause in the interpreter's voice, underneath it, you would hear the witness's true voice speaking on that recording. Open microphones in the courtroom, that tended to happen more so with the judges on the bench. If they were conferring amongst themselves, they would often forget to turn off the microphone. So again, we'd have to go in and redact all that. Fun stuff was all the chatter. So often there'd be hot mics on, or before or after the proceedings, and so people were sitting around waiting for the judges to come in and the sessions to start officially. You'd hear about who's dating who, what party they went to on the weekend, things like that. I mean, just people's lives. I mean, they're here working, and you got to know each other over time, periods of time. But more seriously, sometimes you'd hear witness or the defendant and their counsel talking, and it was getting picked up on the microphone as well. So there's all kinds of chatter. We also discovered there was some deliberate attempts to reverse engineering some of the audio distortion that we had on witnesses as well. So these were all things that we had to accommodate and deal with. But it was really only after everything had been digitized, because we thought the proceedings the procedures were in place and they were secure, witnesses were protected, but then when we started dealing with the digital materials and looking at things closely, we realized there was a lot of work to do on this to really make it accessible widely. Again, redacting, you'd have the interpreters, while the English speaker may finish, the BCS, Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian interpreter may still be speaking, or the French interpreter may still be speaking. So there may be a portion in English that is confidential. So if you just redact the English portion, you're not redacting the French or the lag in the BCS or Kinyarwanda language. And so again, so you'd have to go in and redact each channel differently. And here you go. So something like that. And
30 minutes.
30 more seconds. Okay, well, in that case, I will not go through workflow. Workflow.
Who cares?
10 years of workflow. There you go. Digital Preservation Coalition recognized courtroom recordings as being endangered evidence in court, AV materials, in particular evidence in court, as being critically endangered. Here's all the reasons why. Again, partly because these tribunals were set up to be temporary organizations. And in particular, this one on the bottom here, the lack of understanding that preservation has no completion date. So while the tribunals were focused on getting their work done, completing their mandate and shutting down, which they are still doing, the preservation of these materials still need to continue. Do I have time for the recordings?
For the video.
Okay. Oh, stop my share. Okay.
Share screen. This can choose
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yesterday afternoon, when I returned from here, I
20.
went out to walk around your city.
How is it possible
I couldn't believe
make up stories if they were written to be used for specific.
Can you please indicate to the judges where the bullet entered your head and where it left your head?
So this is just a production that the tribunal they did have a production team for a while. This is just a documentary that they made that talked about the role and importance of witnesses in the tribunal. And the other video I will show at that time is just a little bit.
You need to look at this one.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. As I mentioned, it's 30 years ago now from the first tribunal. This was the first case of the tribunal, Dusan Tadic.
Would you please stand? For the record, would you state your full name, please? As well as any other names that you may have gone by.
Moje ime je Duško Tadić.
And are there any other names that you have gone by, Mr. Tadić? Can you hear, or is there?
This is why I'm playing it. I play this because at the very start of the tribunal, they were dealing with tech issues as well. Be patient with all the other presentations that you go to. They may have this, but it does continue on. But I just wanted to share that with you as well. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I think what I'll do is I'll let the next folks come in that need to, but I will be here at the stand asking questions.
So, yeah, if you have a question, you can just, press the little speaker voice on your mic. And I'll invite the next panelist to come down and we can kind of test your cipher while David answers some questions about his presentation. Yeah.
So it's also the thing about having to use that, moment, because of the interpretation pattern, it's not something that's going to be fast. Probably we can talk a little bit more about how you manage some information of all the different sort of defense and the values of it. You all have like stuff, or if you use for incentivization of the file, is there these are a unified set of templates you can do that across all of these. You talk a little bit about so
yeah, so in there was the templates is in fact the original system that had say I began working in 2012. The original had a system that didn't have time code attached to the transcripts. But as they uploaded it into the system, we got stripped out. And then so you could do exactly. By the time we were really looking at this, we need to go in and look at these, the detail. That was nothing. It challenged because there wasn't a standard, and it was later on there's the servants sort of evolved, so there was challenge one things and the third one previous, but that wasn't always the case. Happened but a lot of really different media or big blocks and so forth and like that. So there was nothing really getting back in that. The process of placing to the creating the recordings, because that's it was that process we had. But we did that was the thing that just we got to all focus on that. We thought the footage were all good. But it was really, I think they were pretty tired and that we really should be started to understand what the problem is. But so is in the recording process itself, and you get a mistake. If you're a good mistake, then kind of convention, you don't need to go back. But unfortunately, we didn't have a reality. The time for it, I guess, to the hard part.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what guidance was the strongest guidance was a lot of that. I mean, they were judicial, they were problem areas, so this is confidential with that. There were a lot of preparation with your hand, in terms of talking with and working with the witnesses that was coming in terms of what they were saying, what was acceptable to them. If they wanted protection measures or not, something that they wanted to be seen, they wanted to be heard, they were, prefer, or they were willing to think that this was kind of a public story. So a lot of that was sort of upfront, and a lot of it is the judge says this is confidential, even though we love to make it public. And even so much, even initially going back to the collections, we had the have to go back to servers to say, can you get an edit to when the city can actually go back to because it's exactly that mail. I think that some of the challenges here, we saw problems with sheet things in the recordings, and so we just had to make sure that we were not just get to them or doing things like, the right way to do it, or if something was done incorrectly. We just need to have that and guide for assurance that we should be doing that before we do anything in that. There was a second victim and witness section of the all for the part, but if you go to the help desk, you know that the witness you want to mention this, who says that, so we'll check with them to see if that is okay before it can be there.
I hate to cut it off there. This has been such an illuminating panel. I want to thank you, David, for your amazing presentation. If you'd like to stay for the next one, it will be preserving Native voices and Indigenous cultural practices at Indiana University, or feel free to pay to another session. But yeah, thank you again, David.
Oh, my stuff, it's all.
Okay.
Sorry, would you like the mic to be? Just pass it. Mark? Because
And I may sit over there. Oh, yeah.
when you say it, I have that, that's why.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's have, do you wanna, can you switch my?
Yes.
Yeah. Or even if you wanted to sit there, then I can call you up. Yeah. Oh, okay, you are, okay, thank you, okay, you don't do it, okay, they're just gonna say slides, but they would prefer to see that, and now that we know that she has, I don't want her sitting. Yes, okay, I don't, yeah, okay. So. Well, we can. But yeah, is it okay if I see? Okay, it's okay. You know, it'll be really great. And I might end up doing this. And, yeah, I mean, I'll go with this.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward, but it's okay. Okay. All right, everyone, in the interest of time, I want to get started. My name is CK. I will be moderating this panel. Entitled Preserving Native Voices in Indigenous Cultural Practices at the University. Our chief presenters are Dan Figurelli, who has been the audio preservation engineer in the university since 2015. Specializing in rare audio formats and has digitized over 10,000 macrodiscs and lap cylinders, including some of the most unique recordings in the world, including the Edward S. Curtis cylinder collection, collected in the 2017 National Registry by the Library of Congress, the Berthold Lawson cylinders, 300 cylinders discovered to be the first one stereo recording from China in 1981. The Orson Welles Library Disc Collection, the Great American Songbook Foundation, the National Czech Museum, Indianapolis State Speedway, and the David Giovanni Cylinder Collection. And Dr. Rachel Boveja is faculty with Indiana University, as well as an international cultural health diplomacy consultant. Her passion for bringing education, cultural understanding, diplomacy, and wellness demonstrates her advocacy for holistic and interdisciplinary work. Dr. Boveja's background involves research for North African and Middle Eastern refugee and Indigenous health policy, epilepsy awareness, and diaspora health. Her overseas experience is with Italy, Greece, Ireland, and Egypt. The 2025 recipient of the Haynes Turner Peacemaker of the Year Award, Dr. Boveja is also the Southwest Asia and North Africa co-chair for Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security in Washington, D.C., and a board member for the FBI Citizen Academy at the Indianapolis State Office. I'd like to remind everyone that this presentation is being recorded, and with that, I'll hand it over to Dan.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Very excited to be here. My name is Dan Figurelli, and I am the audio preservation engineer at the University. And so today I'd like to share with you a little bit about some of the items that we've been able to digitize, as well as some of our workflows that we have in place. The next slide. We were charged with digitizing all significant audio and video holdings at IU back in 2013, when our department began a mass digitization project, which was called the Media Preservation and Digitization Initiative, or in other words, MDPI. So with MDPI, we were charged with digitizing all of these audio and video holdings by the bicentennial in 2020, which included plenty of audio, video, and film. Since then, we've become part of the IU libraries, and we continue to digitize rare and specialized formats. One of our main collections at the university is from the Archives of Traditional Music, which holds one of the largest ethnographic recordings outside of the Library of Congress, including recordings from 70 different countries around the world. Most of these are unique field recordings that don't exist anywhere else, and so each one of these recordings represents a unique, unrepeatable moment in time. So we are very grateful for the opportunity to digitize this material, as well as share with some of these. So just some of the broad strokes of what we do is based on best standards and practices that has been established with Hsieh, Gaza technical committees, sound directions, and the Ars Guide for Preservation. This has a lot to do with format-specific practices and best procedures to incorporate into your daily workflows. A lot of this sort of audio work requires knowledge of historical, ethnographic, and commercial recordings and formats, as well as collection, coordination, development, and evolution of preservation methodologies. So in our facility, which was created back in 2015, is a critical listening space that's designed to be highly accurate and acoustically treated studio environment, since the room ultimately impacts the quality of the work. This gives us the best ability to make the best possible decisions when digitizing, as decisions are not influenced by the rest of the room. This room also has independent HVAC system, power, and lighting, so you don't get any sort of that interference in the audio signal. With our signal chain, we're keeping this as simple as possible to limit any interference into the audio signal. So basically, we're going from the playback machines to the AV converter to the sound card, and where our audio is being digitized as 2496 wave file. From there, and once the files and the metadata are complete, they are uploaded to our post-processing system called the Scholarly Data Archive. This is a process that will embed the audio files with their metadata, generate checksums, and create all further derivatives. Content is then made available to collection managers who will manage access and permissions to media collections online and an Avalon media system. So some of the common formats that we digitize are some of these. Lots of open reel tape, and I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with. Discs, sets, cylinders, bags. Also, we get all kinds of like magnet belts, dictaphones, wire recording, like that. So with open reel tape, mostly we're dealing with 1/4-inch tape, popularly from the 1940s up into the 1980s. There's lots of different brands, and some known brands, some off-name brands, and knowing these qualities and characteristics of these brands helps you to get the idea for that. Also looking at the actual tape, not just the box, to identify what the tape material is. You do that by holding it up to the light and see if you can see the light through it to determine if it is polyester or an acetate tape. Also, you can identify the different track configurations that are going on through a magnetic unit, and decide which one is going to be mono, stereo, is it going forward, is it going backward. Since these are all field recordings, each tape we get is different. So we have actual visual confirmation with the magnet. We use Studer A10 to play these back. We also keep these regularly maintained with the technician and regularly calibrated with their model. So one of the audio examples that I brought today is. It's okay. Yeah, I was gonna make you all guess.
Oh.
So this is a recording that was over tape, recorded back in 1970 in New Zealand, and we need to still have it. So that one is, as you can see from the title, it is a analog 2-track mono tape recorded on 3 3/4. So with a lot of the tape we deal with, it is degrading. There's lots of different symptoms that the tape can show. We've dealt with quite a few of these, including water damage and mold. With mold, we've actually created a mold remediation machine. This is basically a tape machine inside a fiberglass enclosure with ventilation and arm holes. So basically, the operator would be wearing a mask and gloves as he's wiping away the mold with Pelon tape, and the audio is being wound one direction to the other. This method works really well. We've been successful getting pretty good quality transfers from a lot of molten tapes. We also do baking. We also do wet playback methods. We deal with quite a bit of audio cassettes, types 1 through 4. Also Dolby encoded tapes, which would be a different sort of workflow. We also use Tascam 122 Mach 3s, as well as Nakamichi decoders for the Dolby tapes. Also, azimuth adjustments are made for each recording as we get it. So basically, azimuth, as many of you probably know, is going to be the proper alignment of the playback head to the magnetic signal of the original recording. So basically, you're kind of sweeping the playback head, and you're looking for a spot with the most high frequency information. I compare it to sometimes putting a camera lens in and out of this. And so basically, when you hit that sort of sweet spot with the azimuth, when the audio is can be played back by it. So this next example is from a cassette collection entitled Pawnee Voices from the Past. Contains lots of different hymns, languages, and stories, and music, like in this first example.
It's going on.
In this second example, includes the same cassette collection. Elders listening to these old recordings and providing commentary, as well as some translations along with hearing these recordings for the first time. And also in these cassette collections, some of them include lots of extensive documentation as well as word-to-word translation.
He says you're two chiefs that is taking care of us.
Looking after
I want to say something. I don't know what to say when they said Tirawad. Tirawad is the universe.
The universe.
But that was their god. That's what they worship.
Yeah. Tirawa, Tira.
He put us here.
Yeah, he put us here. Tirawa.
Yeah.
He put us here.
So, in addition to tape, we do a lot of discs dating back to shellacs from the 1890s all the way up to vinyl in the present day. Many of those were lacquer discs with either aluminum, glass, or paper bases. We do quite a bit of disc cleaning. These discs are all cleaned by hand with deionized, demineralized, purified water. And each disc, depending on how dirty it may be, may receive 2 to 4 cleanings with different solutions based on how stubborn the degradation is. They also receive a new acid-free envelope once the cleaning is done. Each disc is also inspected with a microscope. We're looking for any sort of delamination, cracking, warping, or plasticizer exudation. Any sort of disc groove issue that might come into play when we're trying to get that. We also take groove measurements of the top and bottom using reticle in the microscope. This is going to help us decide if it is coarse groove or micro groove, depending on how the disc is actually made. It also gives us an idea of what size stylus to begin with. We have over 40 different expert styli, ranging from all different sizes, elliptical and conical truncated shapes. The main primary factors that we're listening for when we're selecting the stylus for this is the quality or the loudness of the surface noise, the presence of distortion depending on the signal, frequency response, and dynamic range of the content. We use Techniques SP15 turntables for this work. We also take label images and attach this to the metadata of the audio file. So this next example is from 1969. It is a disc that contains historical Samoan songs and more. And so you can play a little bit of that, please. Along with this, we also do quite a bit of wax cylinders. The archives of traditional music hold over 7,000 brown wax cylinders. Many of these are unique field recordings that do not exist anywhere else. They're made anywhere between 1890s and 1938. Many of these cylinders and these collections come from over 70 different countries around the world. To do this work, we use the endpoint cylinder machine. This gives us a modern machine to play back some of these cylinders, and it gives superb quality transfers while maintaining an efficient workflow. This also has a microscope attached to it, as well as a laser-guided mandrel, which allows you to center each cylinder as you play it, because inherently they want to wobble. And when you're playing with the stylus, you can imagine how that may sound. And so what this machine does is it corrects for that inherent wobble and allows you to smooth surface to put the stylus on. You're also able to do half-speed transfers, reverse playback, and as well as optical scanning with the laser, so you don't have to actually have to touch it with a stylus. We will do that for some more trouble cylinders. But this next example is a brown wax cylinder that was recorded in 1930, Vancouver Island. So this was part of a bunch of developments, which included 80 cylinders that were recorded in Vancouver. And a lot of them contained documentation saying exactly where it was recorded and what some of the content was. So as I said before, centering cylinders is an essential part of the workflow when working with the endpoint machine. This provides a more stable transfer than you would get with some other methods. In the microscope view allows you to actually see the grooves and some of the issues when playing a cylinder with a stylus. As you can imagine, the stylus going across some of these things doesn't sound particularly well. So it kind of helps you in navigating these transfers. As you play some of these cylinders, it might be spinning at 180 RPM, and you might only get 2 minutes of audio. So every little groove counts. So that's part of making these transfers as high quality as you can, making sure you get every little groove, because it might be the cylinder's last opportunity to be successful. So, okay, right before I am through here, I'd like to play you a couple other examples. This is from the Herzog Standing Rock collection. Became one of 200 cylinders added to the National Registry in 2017. And just a few of the guiding principles for wax cylinder preservation. Just basically means adhering to the best practices that were laid out in some of the documentation I mentioned before. Also trying to reduce and limit as much risk as possible while optimizing the workflow efficiency with your equipment and the playback machines. And with that, I'd like to play one more example. This is from a cylinder that was recorded in Hawaii in 1923. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to my colleague, Dr. Rachel Boveja. Thank you.
And thank you, Dan, and everyone here at Gaza, University of Hawaii. I'm here to close out our presentation by highlighting the connection between preservation piece and what digitization efforts can do for Indigenous populations globally. I also stand here representing my family's Indigenous heritage, which includes the Hawaiian and the Indigenous of Egypt, and I come to this conference as a cultural diplomat, focusing on public policy for refugees and Indigenous populations. So with that, I'd like to also acknowledge IU's First Nations centers and all Senator and all they to help us speak here today, provide some exhibits today. Okay. So we've talked about this a little bit in the presentation today about amplifying our voices. And so the relevance for why I'm here and what the UN has done is with the digitization. So you've all heard some of his samples and some of the things that he's working on, right? All the technical expertise that goes into it. But one of the things Daniel didn't mention is that there are so many communities that approach him in his office to digitize things that they haven't heard, their families haven't heard for decades. So there's a lot of larger collections and private collections, things that are being used to help continue to educate the future populations and the future children of the populations we work with. So a lot of that work, I think accompanies some of the field work that I've done with my refugee and Indigenous studies as well. And a lot of this goes into decision making within forums and policy work that I'll mention in a as well. But the importance, like I said, is the policy work. A lot of what happens if we don't know what has happened, if people aren't speaking up, and if we don't have evidence and concrete evidence of it, unfortunately, anecdotal expertise doesn't always work when it comes to policy work. And we need things like the items that Daniel and most of you are working on in order to get the policies that we need to help the populations that you're talking about today. And so, of course, my background in diplomacy, a lot of it is who is at the table, making these policies and involved in the conversations about their own communities. And who's advocating for them, right? So for those who cannot be at the table, how do we know what we need to advocate for if we don't have certain materials and evidence and interactions with the populations? So Indigenous wellness is community wellness. If you know me, I will always talk about wellness is not just about health in the absence of disease. It is about the community that we have as a whole, how we work together, how we build together, how we problem solve together. And as we all know, in our human history, there's been a lot of problems we needed to solve, and some that we created on our own. But a lot of what comes out of community wellness and the digitization, because we're learning in these songs and in the conversations that you've all heard, they're storytelling, right? It's not just for music alone. Some of it's for the music and the vibration, but it is also for value-added education. A lot of Indigenous and populations, a lot of the ways that they taught their children were through songs, by music, by storytelling. And so it's value-added education, and of course there's some entertainment to it as well. But we've learned things such as medicine and healing, which can be holistic, and of course community building and peacemaking. So when we're listening to these audio recordings and watching some of the audio visual examples that you all have during this conference, a lot of it's meant to build the community. So preserving these different mediums is very important to learning and understanding not what we all do today and how we all operate today, but how was a community built in the past as well. And so the global impact of preserving Native voices, of course, as I mentioned, is the cultural diplomacy. we have to get to know each other. We have to learn about each other in order to create solutions to the problems that we all collectively have, or even those that we have individually that we might need our neighbors' help for. And then the Indigenous networks, I'd like to include, this is one of the Indigenous networks that we have, but as you know, there's a lot more Indigenous conferences and forums that are popping up all over the world now, including we had one in Indiana University last November. It was the first global Indigenous conference on Indigenous perspectives, I'm sorry. And we had over 100 representatives from around the world on Indigenous populations. It was amazing, and this is just one of the many networks that we're having pop up today. And then, of course, as we've all probably talked about before, making sure that we have accurate media representation, and we have the accurate audio and visual mediums that you all present to us. We're able to make sure we're accurately representing these populations in the media, whether it's for entertainment or for documentary reasons. And then, of course, the government representation. Anytime anyone is making decisions about you, you probably want to have a hand in what those decisions are, right? So making sure we have the accurate representation and the government as well as their people. And so the bold path forward, I just say, just this idea of flow that we get out of a lot of our Indigenous populations. Flow with the changes. As you've seen today, a lot of the technology that goes into making sure we preserve our populations, our cultures, our education, using the technology to further help preserve those voices. Many of you have so much more technical expertise than I have, and I thank you for that. So that means that we need to collaborate with colleagues in different industries. I think Daniel and I are an example of that right now. I love what you do, but I don't know how to do it. And I'm just grateful that I'm able to share what your work can do for my industry and the work that I'm doing for the population that you represent. And then, of course, discovering innovative expressions that bridge the past, present, and future. And with that, I mean audio, visual, oral storytelling, artwork, everything that we have all done throughout human history to continue to preserve voices, even if it's not orally or audio. And so with that, a call to action that I have for everyone is to continue to honor Indigenous voices and expressions through the various expressions I mentioned, the audio, video, written word, art, and so much more. To use your voice to amplify Indigenous communities like many of you are doing at this conference, and do so with your work outside of this conference. And support Indigenous networks, communities, and conferences. A lot of what this means is, I think one of our colleagues talked about this earlier today. Make sure we're continuing to talk to each other, learn from each other, listen, share, take those opportunities. That's a way to support each other, right? And so with that being said, that is all I have for you. And mahalo.
Thank you, Rachel and Daniel. It is lunch. But I guess if you come up to Rachel and Dan and take questions if you'd like to stay, but please feel free to go down and get lunch or off campus. And let's give another round of applause, please.
No, it's okay. It's not that, but it's longer. Yeah, we're nervous. Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you so much. Wonderful.
Back to here. Come on.
All right, it's 2 o'clock. So thank you everybody for being here for this afternoon session. My name is Ruprecht Langer. I'm from the German Music Archive, Leipzig National Library. And we have 3 presentations today. We will learn a lot about everything we need to know about preserved cultural heritage from very different parts of the world, namely Nairobi, Taiwan, and Hawaii. these materials are all endangered. And due to different threats and what was already done to safeguard them. Please, come in. After each presentation, we will have a couple of minutes for questions, both live and from the audience online in Zoom. Hello to you. I'm very much looking forward to present our first speaker to you. Jessie Shiroma is born and raised on the Hawaiian Islands and is a recent graduate of the University of Hawaii, a Master of Libraries Information Science program. Utilizing his past experience as a professional musician and audio engineer, and singer, I think, he now holds the post as an archivist at Hawaii State Archives, where he oversees the development of the Hawaiian music collection that currently comes into being. With this, he takes care of reawakening voices of the past, processing the Hawaiian music collection at the Hawaii State Archives. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, viewers.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you've all had a wonderful lunch, a chance to restore your vittles. Whether you are here to learn about what we're up to at the Hawaii State Archives or maybe take a nap to digest, you're all welcome here. It's just great to have so many wonderful minds, stories, and experiences at this event overall. So without further ado, let's get this started. So my name is Jessie Shiroma. I am the newest archivist at the Hawaii State Archives, having just hit 1 year with the institution. Amongst my many roles there, handling legislative records, land reports, photographic materials, genealogical resources, artifacts, and so on, I am assisting in the build-out of our nascent Hawaiian music collection. And in this presentation, I will guide us through a brief introduction to who we are, what we do, and how we are moving forward in stewarding this incredible resource. Before I continue, however, I would like to note that I myself am still very much an audio transfer neophyte. And a major part of my being here, both personally and as a representative of the Hawaii State Archives, is to learn from my peers and colleagues and about how we can better improve our processes in handling this collection. And with that, I thank you for joining me today. And without further ado, let's begin. All right, a brief introduction to the State Archives. Established in 1905, the Hawaii State Archives collects, preserves, and makes available to the public Hawaii government records of permanent value. And by government, I don't just mean the state, but the kingdom, provisional, territorial periods as well. Amongst our mountains of bureaucratic records, our holdings include private collections of individuals and organizations, photographs, maps, and artifacts. We also maintain various library collections, specializing in Hawaiian history, culture, and most recently, music, of which the backbone is our Hawaiian music collection, consisting of audio recordings from across the century and spanning a variety of formats, from wax cylinder to vinyl. The origins of this collection began in 2022 with the generous donations of the Michael Scott and Harry B. Soria Jr. estates, totaling approximately 15,000 phonodisc records. Not long after, collector and Hawaiian music discographer Malcolm Rockwell added his own substantial collection to the archives. And along with an outpouring of smaller donations, the Hawaiian music collection now sits at approximately 28,000 phonodisc records, along with a couple hundred instruments, sheet music, ephemera, and so forth. With such an unprecedented opportunity to preserve and perpetuate the history of recorded sound in Hawaii, we at the State Archives have begun to develop a process within our extremely limited budget and staffing power to just guide us from initial receival, basically, all the way through digitization and archival storage, along with, of course, public dissemination. Our process was inspired in no small part by the accomplishments and documentation of well-established repositories. For instance, the Smithsonian, Library of Congress, UCLA, UCSB. So really, a lot of you here, we have so much to thank for in trying to get our feet wet in this field. And I hope some of what I've shared today kind of reflects, just in the footsteps of where you guys have led the charge. As each institution has its own unique requirements, though, in handling its collections, adjustments are necessary to best facilitate our own workflow. And I will impress just one last time, and I won't say it anymore, that this presentation is not only an opportunity for us to share the beginnings of our story, but also an invitation to those of you here to provide any critiques or suggestions moving forward, especially in the Q&A. I'm all ears. So, without further ado, let's run through our process. It all begins with the initial receival of a collection. Depending on the size, sometimes it is a few boxes delivered via private vehicle to our doorstep, and sometimes it is offloading multiple pallets of materials, carefully stacked, secured, and wrapped to maintain stability. Regardless of how they arrive, they are transported to our receiving facility in Mapunahuna, where we assess their condition for any dents, tears, or transport-related damage before shelving them for further processing. If boxes are compromised or the records are not arranged in an ideal manner, we will rehouse them to minimize any stress placed upon them. And once stabilized, if a collection arrives with no explicit instructions on maintaining the designated order, we will normally adhere to respect the forms, but we may deviate if the situation requires and resort by media type, label, or other parameters. Once a collection has been stabilized, it will rest here until we fetch it for processing, starting with cleaning. As a first timer to IASA, I've quickly learned the depth of knowledge our attendees bring to the table. So I apologize if some of this presentation are old hat to you. Nonetheless, our cleaning workflow can be surmised in 3 simple steps. First, a manual inspection to verify the material type and the condition of the recording. Of course, acetate, shellac, aluminum, vinyl, glass, so forth. They all demand varying degrees of cleaning, ranging from a full cycle to none whatsoever. If it's hands off, that's what it is. After confirming the material, we will assess its general condition, looking for cracks, chips, anything that compromises its integrity, and pull those so as not to exacerbate the damage or contaminate the core with moisture and so forth. As a majority of our collection comprises shellac and vinyl records, our current cleaning process consists of 2 simple steps. The first is a Keith Monk's Discovery 1 with the appropriate cleaning agent, whether it is deionized distilled water or anti-fungicide. The second step right now, which only applies to vinyl, as from what I understand, the jury is still kind of out on running shellac through that, is the deep gridder ultrasonic cleaner. We actually just upgraded to a Mark II. I apologize, I thought it was an outdated one. And bar exceptional cases of mold or impacted particulates, this 2-step process has proven highly effective at cleaning to produce better recordings. And once they are cleaned, we move on to indexing. Of course, as we know here, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. Indexing records of any medium at the Hawaii State Archives requires the accurate notating of all essential information to maximize searchability. And by documenting a number of criteria, we are able to produce record entries that can not only be found easier, but also provide information that shares deeper insight into the audio recording itself. We aim to include as much relevant metadata per recording as possible, as researchers and music enthusiasts alike often begin their work with only a few scraps of information. And whether these scraps are a matrix number, a stage name, recording date, or otherwise, the criteria we utilize hopefully allows patrons to locate items through a variety of search terms and filter ranges, and they can filter through records released under a specific label, date range, artist, song title, so forth. Technical metadata such as cartridges, styli, tracking force, anti-skate, and so forth are, of course, also documented, but currently exist on the back end of our indexes. The individual record information, however, is pulled from a number of reliable resources. By far, the majority of our metadata is drawn directly from Malcolm Rockwell's discography of Hawaiian and Hawaiian guitar records, 1891 to 1960. Through friendly, if infrequent communication, we are able to not only receive updates that he makes to his work, but submit new finds for him to include in future iterations. While the vast number of records in donated collections are solely comprised of Hawaiian music, some also contain non-Hawaiian or Hawaiian-adjacent items that nonetheless receive the same care and attention to detail. For these recordings, we turn to UC Santa Barbara's discography of American historical recordings to supplement our reference materials. It's been positively integral in our work. Incredible product. And in the worst case scenario, we cannot locate a record in either of these indices. We will simply copy the information present on the record itself exactly as depicted. With the record cleaned and indexed, we move on to digitizing. All right. So now, digitizing audio is one of the, by far the newest process introduced at the Hawaiʻi State Archives. And through this process, we simultaneously produce 2 copies of a recording, an archival copy of raw audio, sounds equalization or post-production, and 2, an access copy that applies a general EQ curve with some very light post-production elements to clean up cracks, etc., and generally make it more palatable to the listener. Given our current status of funding, manpower, and training, it should be stressed that this access copy is not a true attempt at restoration or remastering, but an opportunity for the casual listener to enjoy a slightly more conditioned recording. We achieve this with the following equipment and workflow. Our turntable is a replica Trovator that we utilize with a quiver of Grado elliptical cartridges and styli in various sizes, ranging from 0.7, 1.5, 2.3, 2.5, 3, 3.5, and 4 mil. While we generally run records at 78 RPM, we will obviously defer if another speed is noted on the record label, and we also cross-check Replica's manual on label specs to see if any variance is required. The signal then runs through our solid-state VAD-lid preamp. Shout out to if Dave here, if he's not, shout out to Dave for turning us onto that. Over at Folkways, which outputs this preamp outputs 2 stereo signals, one raw signal, which is neutral in relation to the equipment being used, and the access version where we apply a preset EQ curve from a number of options pre-built into the VAD lid, which you can see on the bottommost table on the slide. These options range from flat for old acoustic recordings to various American and European ranges. Amongst other features, the preamp, of course, also offers an 80 Hz low cut filter and a variable high cut filter and so forth. Just the sprinkles. So while this VAD lid cannot achieve the accuracy of a hand dial touch, it does offer us that best fit line, which, in consideration of the size of the collection and the need to create product over process, we utilize it to keep the process moving forward steadily. We at the archives naturally want to push the quality of our work as far as possible, but I am currently the only archivist available to work on this project, and I'm not addressing the reference desk or numerous other projects. It's quite an adventure so far. For those interested in restoring a track to the pinnacle of period accuracy, the flat recording is available to dissect and restore on a far more detailed level. I'll have more to say on this later in the presentation. The preamp then sends the raw and EQ signals down 2 separate chains. The raw signal runs straight into our Lynx E44 sound card, while the EQ'd signal is first routed through a swoop vinyl sugar cube, just to remove any clicks or pops, before then also routed into the sound card. All monitoring is done through a Coleman PS1A, the Sony MVR7506s, and Yamaha HS5s. We handle our audio in Adobe Audition because as a state entity, that's what we have accessible to us, and we're subscribed to the suite. Through a straightforward process. This is aimed to accommodate a volunteer team who often do not have extensive knowledge in DAWs. So we're kind of treading a very fine line, which I'm happy to explore later in the Q&A. While modern DAWs offer immense audio production capabilities, our own process is quite simple for the sake of productivity and user operation. Once both the raw and processed tracks have finished recording, we address them one by one. The raw track simply left as is. No trimming, normalizing, or post-production, whatsoever it's done. Thank you for that, Hsieh, for that advice. We leave these untouched versions for the real engineers and music enthusiasts to download and work their own restorative magic upon. Whereas the access track is, we just trim the ends a little bit to reduce the dead space before and after. It undergoes normalization, a gentle low pass filter, and if necessary, we do use the built-in noise remover plugin, usually at a very light setting again, just to kind of smooth out the recording. When both tracks are ready for export, we label them per their series, box, record, and side. We bounce them at 2496 WAV files before they are then prepped for online population. Once records have been cleaned, indexed, and digitized, we reach the final step of validating the metadata before releasing it to the world via our digital archives. We validate this data with an RTP, or record transfer protocol, which is our way of vetting that all the information on the index abides by designated parameters. The RTP is a very simple XML document composed of elements that hold authority over the data in our spreadsheet indexes. We utilize a variety of expressions to catch errors, confirm ranges, and effectively manage hundreds and eventually thousands of individual entries. Once an index is validated by an RTP, we know the information is correct, and we can finally move on to releasing it on our digital archives. Okay, so the digital archives of Hawaii is one of the largest undertakings at our institution, where we are steadily working on creating digital surrogates of records, visual, audio, manuscript, you name it, to make these available online and better serve both our local and international communities. Our music entries include an image of the record label, all relevant metadata that we can gather, and both the raw and access copies of the recording. Staying on top of copyright law, if we cannot 100% confirm that a song is out of copyright, we will hold back on publishing the tracks and just release the image and metadata with a backend algorithm that will automatically publish those recordings when the copyright expires per the MMA. But if they're out of copyright, patrons are free to stream, download, and utilize these recordings as they see fit. Featured here, we're going to play a little bit of music, is a brief clip of a 1911 recording of Pole Waimea, recorded by Ernest Ka'ai and the Ka'ai Glee Club on Columbia. Being an acoustic recording, there is very little we do for the access track aside from trimming the ends and applying a dental low pass filter and the denoiser. PowerPoint is being a little funky, so we're gonna dive in here. It's gonna open up in a separate window, but it should work. We did test this. Let's see what happens here. It's gonna take about 20, 30 seconds or so. Go to volume control. All right, I'm going to stop it right there because we have a few more clips you want to get through. Let me return to our PowerPoint. Let's see here. Where did you go? Let's switch that. Let's see at the bottom. There we go. So that was the raw you heard. And as a fun little side fact, Pole Waimea is a mele inoa, or a name chant that honors Kamehameha I, and is generally described as a war chant concerning spear making. So its creation was dated to roughly 1785. And to hear it rearranged with such levity, honestly surprised me. So there's that. Music is full of wonder. All right, one more time, we're going to jump right back into this. But this is now the access copy. So again, with the acoustic recordings, there's not much we do right now. So you may notice that, again, not much has changed. All right, we're gonna keep trucking ahead here. Let's see. So right away. How do I get that to our PowerPoints? It wouldn't be a presentation if there wasn't one Zoom issue, I tell you. Before I clicked on here. Oh, okay, so I click at the bottom. Very easy. All right, trucking on. Just two more very quick clips. I also just wanted to briefly feature an electrical recording as well to demonstrate that best fit line of EQ. I'm not sure if these speakers will represent that well, but we're going to try it. In this instance, it's a 1938 recording of the popular tune Noho Pai Pai. This one played by Johnny Almeida's Hawaiians on the Hawaiian Transcription Productions label. Let's dive in. First is the raw version. Awesome, perfect. All right, and then we're going to charge right ahead into an access copy. All right, and we're coming down to the wire here, so we're just going to wrap it up with, of course, the essential reason why we exist is storage. Let's see here. One of the fundamental expectations of our archives, of course, is our ability to safely and effectively store a variety of records for long-term preservation. We store our records in a custom polyester sleeve that are chemically inert and gas permeable. The sleeves are then stored in acid-free half-tube archival boxes, which we source from a variety of suppliers, each box accommodating a maximum of 50 records. They're then stored for long-term preservation in our vault, kept at an average of 61 degrees Fahrenheit with a resting humidity of 15%. All right, so while we recognize our progress thus far, we are thankful to have both a local and a national community that has provided helpful suggestions for improvement. I'd also like to extend my personal gratitude to Mr. Hsieh, who has generously made time during his trips between Texas and Hawaii to visit our institution to provide consulting, as well as Dave Walker at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, upon their phenomenal work, our system is generally modeled after. We would not be where we are now without them, and hope to bring our work up to their standards in due time. With that said, some of the feedback we have received and hope to employ moving forward when feasible is as follows. My priorities for improvement focus on making better raw transfers of these recordings. While learning how to effectively restore and remaster is a future endeavor I look forward to, it is far more important for me to develop knowledge of what it takes to produce quality raw files for the gifted engineers around the world who can work with them. The crux of this challenge is better utilizing our quiver of styli to determine the best size for a given period and label in relation to its wear, as well as interpreting the results of this testing via spectral analysis. I myself am just learning the fundamentals of this practice and recognize its immense usefulness to the field of audio restoration. Consistently ensuring that these vintage records are properly centered in conjunction with anti-state is also a practice I'm continuing to dial in, pun intended. Having developed a musician's ear over the last decade, I am now having to retrain it to listen back as a beginner archivist engineer hybrid, and it is truly staggering the amount of information one can interpret on a playback. So kudos to all of you here who carry out that noble work. Being well aware of the lack of standardization in the early years of recorded sound, we also have limited resources regarding RPM speed of the archives. So unless noted on the record label, in available reference materials or otherwise, we do default to 78 RPM. I continue to explore the audio forums, but have yet to develop the tricks of the trade that allow experts to lock these period measurements in quickly and accurately. And as for hardware, we're closing in. We are looking to acquiring a direct drive motor over a belt drive, given the vast amount of shellac records that require a high tracking force. And to best accommodate this high tracking force, I'm also pushing for changes to the current line of Grado equipment that we currently use for something a bit more robust, while also complementing our current line of styli with a truncated set to capture more sonic data. When it comes to software, I'd like to incorporate Cedar or Diamond Cut restoration tools into our process, as it quite simply offers some of the most useful tools for this kind of work, even for access copies. This would also naturally require a much more powerful CPU that our stock state supplied Dells just would probably explode, but we'll talk. We've only begun digitizing these records, starting with generally available commercial recordings. So I hope that by instituting these changes as soon as possible, we can retroactively retransfer our work to ensure we take things off on the right foot, while also properly handle the more rarer and or fragile recordings. So with that said, as a memory institution, it is our duty to protect and make available our holdings to the public. We have had over a century to master the handling of manuscripts and printed materials, but audio work is still very new to us, and we hope that through our own research and as well as the welcome interactions with the IASA community and CIPAVA community, of course, we can not only honor but elevate the position of recorded Hawaiian sound on the international stage. I look forward to seeing you all at future events and sharing the progress of our work, as well as more dedicated stories on the collection itself. With that, I would like to thank you all for your time. Please feel free to contact me via the information on the screen and have a wonderful rest of the conference.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, please.
I was wondering, if you are doing type of materials,
yeah,
about the conservation situation and the process or also the one expand. Do you ever consider the finally that do you ever allow them to public situation and
excellent question. Yes, we absolutely have means to facilitate this. This also slightly deviates into another topic that, time permitting, very little time left, but time permitting, the question does arise of sensitive recordings that, private home recordings or so forth. Those we don't make available. Case in point, without, of course, explicit permission, we do have a set of home acetate recordings from the Beamer of Kohana when they're on Hawaiʻi Islands. And so it's just a couple of their mele, just Panikapila style. And we did talk to Dr. Beamer over at Kamakakuokalani just to say, hey, this ended up with us. We want to take care of these, digitize them, and with your permission, if you deem it appropriate, make it available. So he came in, he listened to those recordings first, and he said, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good. These ones, please, just protect them. So, great question.
Anybody else? Or is there something I can see? I would like to know, will you be a registered user of the state archives, or is there a link to the archive? To the catalog?
Yes, digital archives. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I apologize. I probably should say where to find us. Of course, you can Google Digital Archives of Hawaii or digitalarchives.hawaii.gov. We'll bring you to our archive, our website. We are generally not very satisfied with the UI, so that may undergo a major overhaul. So stay tuned. But yes, all of those are available online. Our mission as the public archives is we serve the public. Everything we have, unless explicitly stated otherwise, belongs to the public and is their right to access them, whether they're on Oahu or Hawaii Island, Molokai, across on the continent or elsewhere. So please get in contact with us, explore the archives. We love sharing stories and knowledge with each other.
Yeah, thank you. Just one last question. Just how many guitars do you have? There's no picture.
Oh, yeah. So actually, that was a snapshot of our ukulele collection. So it's a vintage ukulele collection. The guitars are coming though. We have about, I believe, 400 vintage ukulele from the turn of the century. A couple of original ones made by the Nunez family, Diaz family. Some of the original builders who invented and promulgated the ukulele throughout the islands. So we're working on making those available. That is a whole different story for a different presentation elsewhere, but please feel free to come up and while I'll talk story after. I'd be happy to share more about that project.
Thank you. Is there another question? Anything? Yes, please. I think there's time for one more.
Excellent question. So as of now, we generally operate in the most conservative boundaries that the MMA has established. We are trying to figure out means, it's kind of been put on me to figure out the owners of who can we talk to. Like, so Court International owns the copyright to a whole bunch of fine recordings. And so we're kind of reaching that phase of, we're trying to find large groups that hold onto the rights of a lot of these materials, especially the more popular commercially recorded ones, and trying to see how we can somehow, negotiate, a deal where we can make it maybe available for streaming, but not download. So that is a great question. It's an ongoing process, but so for now, usually, again, we abide by MMA. So of course, if you go into our digital archives and you see the recording, but you don't actually see the files available, that means that we're still sorting through that. If you do see the files available, it means that it's been cleared by existing law, and we're free to do what you get with it.
Sehr gerne, dass Sie Bitte. Our next speaker is Hsieh, correct? More or less, thank you. Yuan is an assistant professor at the Graduate Institute of Documentary and Film Archiving, Tainan National University of the Arts in Taiwan. She received her PhD education and an MA in Moving Images Archive Studies from the UCLA. Her research interests include moving image archiving, film preservation, home movies, amateur film, and critical pedagogy. She has published on audiovisual heritage in journals and is committed to community-based approaches to preserving gay and marginalized audiovisual histories. These are the perfect opportunity to talk about home videos as counter-archives, critical pedagogy, and the preservation of marginalized voices. So thank you, dear Yuan, for being here, and stay to you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and share some thoughts and reflection on home video of counter archive. And actually, this talk comes from the work we've been doing for many years, and from a course I've been teaching for the past 4 years. So actually, my own journey in film archiving actually started in China National University of the Arts, or TNMUA for short. I first did my master's degree there in sound and image management back in 2007. Later, I went to UCLA for another master's degree in moving image archive study, and then go on to the PhD degree in education with specialization in cultural studies. So this day, most of my work focused on preserving home movies and videotape heritage in Taiwan. I'm especially interested in community-based archiving projects. And at the same time, I try to place Taiwan in global context, thinking about how our local practice connect with similar efforts elsewhere in the world. So the title of my presentation is Home Video as Counter Archive, Critical Pedagogy and the Preservation of Marginalized Voices. I focus on videotape collected from ordinary people in Tainan City. A key question I want to raise is what role does critical pedagogy play? For us, it's our guiding idea and the method. We use it to involve both our students and the Tainan residents in our workshop and the preservation work. And the reason is simple. We believe that archiving should begin with them. The goal is to encourage people to preserve their own home videos and to share their family memories and the story with us. So let me begin with the motivation behind the study. Home video has long been neglected in mainstream archival practice. For decades, archive tends to focus on state, institutional, and professional media. But starting in the late 1980s, with the spread of consumer video cameras in Taiwan, many families began documenting their everyday life, like family galleries, local events, community activities. These recordings look ordinary, but they actually hold tremendous values, as I call counter archive. It's repository of memory that churned official narrative and fill in historical silence. So my question is, how can we use the principle of critical pedagogy to meaningfully engage both our students and the ordinary time non-residents in preserving their own home videos? Second, how does the act of preserving home videos function as a form of cultural empowerment to take ownership of their personal and collective histories. Third, how do the archiving resort, challenge, complicate, and refine dominant historical narratives? So we choose Tainan as our main site for this project. It comes from several reasons. First, my school is actually located in the northern Tainan, and the city itself is one of the oldest in Taiwan, with a long history, many temples, and a strong tradition. People there value their family ties and community memory, making it especially meaningful to raise awareness about preserving home video. So these tapes are not just private family records, they're also part of the cultural heritage of Taiwan, helping to people's memory spirit and the community identity. So my research method, I draw from three main approaches. First, the best on field work and the observation at ENUA courses and workshops. Over the years, our university has organized a series of workshops, based on videotape preservation workshop. And this has become a central platform for engaging both our students and the local community. Second, my work is grounded in participatory research. I don't just observe this workshop from a distance. I actively join in and working alongside the participants as they bring their tapes, learn preservation techniques, and share their stories. And third, I use ethnographic observation. That means I should pay attention to the detail, like how people interact with the tape, how they respond to the idea of preservation, and how this activity will shape their understanding of memory and history. So let's clarify first what I mean by home video. Unlike home movies, which were shot on film, home videos are recorded made on videotape, like Betamax, VHS, Video A, High A, and Mini DV, and etc. Both home movies and home video belong to what scholars call home mode moving image. As Richard Chapman showed, that they are cultural artifacts like diaries and family album full of social and cultural meaning. James Mora adds the home movies are more than just recordings. They capture everyday life, they negotiate identity, preserve family stories, and connect generations. So back to Taiwan, the story of home videos in Taiwan is quite different from how we see in Western context. It really took off in the late 1980s, right after the lifting of martial law. Taiwan was going through democratization and economic growth, and the consumer electronics become more and more affordable. Video cameras, especially those with both recording and playback, become very popular. Many families both land abroad, often from like Japan or Hong Kong, with Sony and Panasonic leading the market. So by the early 1990s, home video making spread quickly, and family filmed everyday life, travel, and like big milestone. First, school events and the wedding. So this tape become like a visual record, visual diaries, personal but also expressive. By the late 1990s, recording everyday life on video has become completely normal. And in the 2000s, this shifted into digital format. First with digital camera and later with smartphone. So in terms of the preservation challenge. First, videotape does last forever. The magnetic tape slowly breaks down, and the machine needed to play lane are hard to find in Taiwan. And second, in the early 2000s, many families converted their videotape into digital format. And then at the same time, they will often throwing away in order to save space. As a result, a lot of variable material was lost. Digitization gives us easier access, but without the original tape, the historical and archival value was seriously reduced. In response to this urgent situation, our school began organizing videotape preservation workshop to help rescue and protect these home videos before they disappear. So one of the key foundations for this work comes from a word I teach at TNUA called critical pedagogy, speaking out for marginalized archives. This course has really shaped how we design and run our preservation workshop. This idea is to bring the principles of critical pedagogy into both academic and public archiving, so that preservation becomes more than a technical skill. It becomes an educational and a cultural practice. The course itself has three main parts. First, it begins with theoretical foundation. Students read texts like Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Press and Spielbach essay, like Can the Subaltern Speak? Along with the work on public history. These readings give them framework of thinking about like knowledge, power, and the marginalization in the context of archive. Second, be involved in exploring and collecting marginalized archive. Students need to learn how to identify overlooked material and analyze them within the historical, social, and cultural setting. And third, we emphasize applying critical pedagogy in practice, which means students take part in the preservation, documentation, and advocacy of marginalized audiovisual material. They engage directly with community, thinking carefully about ethics, and work to amplify silence the voices. So the integration of theory, exploration, and practice allow our students to be a part of workshop, assisting the workshop goes smoothly. So since 2013, TNUA has begun running videotape preservation workshop to help the public safeguard their home videos. Over the past 12 years, we've organized a total of 54 workshops across Taiwan. They have taken place in the north, like Taipei, New Taipei City, and Hsinchu, in the center, like Taichung, and in the south, like Tainan, Kaohsiung, Pingtung. We also reached the eastern part of this island, including Yilan, Hualien, and Taitung. So the city with the most workshop is Tainan, where we held like 23 sections. In fact, the most recent one took place just this past June in the Jiali, a district of Tainan City. Beyond Taiwan, we also expanded this initiative internationally with 2 workshops held abroad, one in Thailand and another in Guam. So for the workshop structure, this designed a sustained practice of critical media engagement, combining lecture, hands-on training, and reflexive screenings. In the opening lecture, the instructor always frames preservation not just as a technical text, but as a culturally grounded and politically aware act, empowering our workshop participants to refine their voices and challenge historical marginalization. And during the hands-on practice, participants can learn DIY techniques to clean, repair, and slice videotapes embodied John Dewey's idea, like learning by doing. This practical engagement demystify the media and give ordinary people the skill and confidence to preserve their own home video. And each workshop concludes with a training and discussion of participants on video. By sharing their memories and personal stories, participants gain a deeper appreciation of their family and community history, which reflecting on how the state stories are often missing from official record. This process highlights the value of grassroots preservation and inspire a sense of responsibility of safeguarding Taiwan's vernacular moving image. So I want to show you some pictures from our workshop. In the workshop, we began by giving participants a brief history of moving image, from film to videotape, and then to digital format. We also introduced the preservation work that our team has been doing over the past decade. And the key message we share with our participants is simple but powerful. Your movie image, your home video maker, they are not just important to you and your family, but also to the larger community and the society as a whole. They serve as evidence for future generations to better understand everyday life, not only as research or education material, but as a part of living history. So as you can see, we will display different kind of media format to show our participants. And this can help them build knowledge about media technology and giving them the skill to recognize and identify this media format in the future. So during the hands-on section, participants use very ordinary, everyday tool to repair their videotape. Things you can easily find in a stationery or hardware store, for example. Craft knife, markers, screwdrivers, lens cleaning clothing, even household stain remover. The people who joined our workshop were mostly from Tainan area, some from Jiali, and some from the Tainan city center, and one from like Yulin. They each wrote tape with very personal stories. For example, on the left side of this slide, you can see the two young women who wrote tapes of their childhood, mostly maybe 3 to 5 years old. And this record was shoot by their mother. And the man in the top photo wrote his wedding video, which he hasn't watched in over 20 years because he no longer has the equipment and he had no idea how to preserve it. And in the lower part of the slide, on the right side, the participants wrote a tape of a lecture on Taiwanese literature. As you can see, all of them learned how to open the video cassette, take out the reels, and use the simple tool to clean and repair muddy 30 home video. It's a powerful moment because participants realize they can take care of their own family memories with their own hand. So the final part of the workshop is the reflexive screening. We gather together to watch the preserved tape, and this is often the most powerful moment. Participants shared their story, how their family has changed, how their life has evolved, and what does moment mean to them. They reflect on who recorded the videotape and what was happening back then and how they see themselves now. So this session is both emotional and educational. It helps people realize that their home video are not just a private memory, but a part of larger cultural history. This is what we call history from below, and preserving the voices and experiences of ordinary people. And this is our mission, to safeguard everyday life and show that this personal history are essential to our collective memory. Okay, so the workshop. Let me finish this.
1 minute.
Okay. To sum up, the workshop serves several important educational functions that I want to emphasize again here. First, it helps cultivate critical media literacy. Participants begin to see media not just as entertainment, but as cultural evidence. Second, it raises awareness of the significance of home videos. People realize that these tape carry both family meaning and social value. Third, you inspire a sense of responsibility. They understand that preserving their own tape is part of preserving history, and this builds a deeper historical consciousness. And finally, the workshop transformed learning by doing into learning by preserving. By working with their own tape, people don't just against the old, again an appreciation of why this material matters. Together, this function makes the workshop not only a technical training, but also a cultural and educational experience.
Thank you. You're fantastic and great stories in there. We have some time for questions. Is there anybody who'd like to ask something? Yes, you have first, I think.
Hi, thank you so much. That was really inspiring. I am curious. I guess it really used to concentration efforts and focus on organizations, and I'm really by your work with individuals, and I'm wondering if there's a way that we can see or measure the way the change that individuals have in seeing the value of audiovisual heritage, how that moves outside of just the individual. Like, is there like an impact that it has that would maybe like help advocate for conservation initiatives regionally or something like that?
Actually, I have interviewed several participants, maybe back in 2018, because I did my PhD dissertation. So they told me they will share this digital file through like social platform like Line. We use it a lot in Taiwan. And sometimes they will watch their home video together during the family gathering time, like Chinese New Year. They will share their memory and tell their family story from senior generation to younger generation. So I think it's the impact of the workshop we bring. And this influence also become a very strong bonding within the community, because they will tell their friends or relatives, and more people will come to our workshop to repair their own home video. So it could be form like a way and help us to appreciate or empower ourselves, and we can do our work better. Yeah.
Yeah, do you think you have another question over there? Yeah, yes, please.
Like, I really do. I was thinking of something about it. These people are actually, told them how to be able to do like and then people need to for the other how about them for who have to do these things are important on the how do you manage the population?
Actually, it's a very big challenge for our school. We do have an archive called Newsreel and Documentation Archive. And we only reserve their digital file on our hard drive. And they will they bring back their original tape. And I just told the workshop participants, if you lose your digital format or your original tape, you can come to us. Again, we can give you your digital file, but we can guarantee them for a long time, because we only just reserve them in our drive wares. Yeah, so it's a very big challenge for us. We don't have so many funding to preserve, and like the workshop, we just has a lot of volunteers to help us to organize the workshop. We don't have any payment or any salary. Yeah.
What about the formalization? Do you actively translate and do it, or as a photo of school along with the honor?
The copyright, yes. We don't own the copyright. So we just keep them for the educational and the research purpose. We don't use it for commercial use. Yeah.
I think the question many layers. Maybe we can discuss this later on, because there's so much more in there. I'm glad we still have plenty of time for the last presentation to conclude this session. Now, last speaker, thank you.
Thank you.
And I checked that there are no online questions from the so last concluding speaker is Susan Kibaara. Susan is the Deputy Director of County Records and Archives Management at Nairobi City County Government, where she leads all records management functions alongside many other duties. She is responsible for budget planning, training, and ensuring compliance with ISO standards for quality and security of records. Susan has a large interest in the country's strategic transformation, especially for digital archiving and digitization projects. Susan also acts as a key liaison with external stakeholders on record management matters. She holds a Bachelor in Information Science from the University of South Africa and is currently pursuing a master's degree in knowledge management and innovation. So thank you very much, Susan, for being here to tell us about documenting temporal displacement and lost narratives in Nairobi's flood-prone communities. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here present, as we said, on documenting temporal displacement and lost livelihoods in Nairobi's flood from communities. And as part of my work, an activist working on archival documents and especially the audio videos that are generated by our media in our county, I felt the need to document these, and I was privileged to see the theme on this in the year circumstance 2025. And a short story about myself. I'm brought up in a farm, and I think my parents really overworked. And I overworked to a point I didn't like farming anymore. And in 2024, I decided to try farming when I'm grown up, and I put all my savings in some farm, and the flood came. Unfortunately, they just decided to come when I just started again and thinking I have a problem doing it, and it took away all my savings, and all the floods took the plants and everything. I spent everything on that, but I'm okay. And when I thought about that, I decided, because that was in the countryside, I decided let me try it and document what was happening in Nairobi city, because that's why I love. And that's why we're generating information. I decided to delete everything that I had captured in my audio as part of my journey with family, but I decided with the records for Nairobi County. So I'll be presenting on this. And yeah, that's an image. That's what happened. So my presentation will be part of it. Talk about what was happening, and it will be accompanied by the images of this duration. So in 2024, around May to June, between the month of April and June, Nairobi County experienced a devastating floods that not only caused physical damage, but also led to a lot of invaluable property, because there are very many people living in the riparian land. And being Nairobi County, being the city county of Kenya, there's a lot of rural to urban migration, and as much as we want people to settle in properly urbanized, some of them will always find their way to living along the riparian land where they are not paying rent and rates. So in this presentation, we'll explain the significance of these narratives and efforts to capture and preserve them together with the impact on our cultural heritage and the future of urban planning. Why I talk about urban planning is because Nairobi County government, where I work, we're the ones in charge of urban development and buildings, and we are the ones who give approvals. So I felt that documenting this information would help the urban planners when they are giving approval. They'll be able to tell the riparian land and their flood-prone areas, so that when they're giving approvals, they know how safe they are. And also for the roads, we're also in charge of roads and the networks infrastructure. So I also felt that that sector will also be assisted in understanding where the floods are, because we always say that you either create road for the water, or the water just let it run it. So imagine a city where in just few hours, streets turned into rivers, homes were submerged, lives and education were disrupted. A lot of schools were closed. We could not access. I also could not access going to work. So we started working remotely, and roads were cracking, and homes were overflooded. There's some homes where the cars were overflooded, and then up to the rooftop, and the houses were all submerged, especially the Bangladesh. So 2024 flooding in Nairobi City County highlighted our vulnerability and urgent need to sustainable urban planning. A significant, Okay, so a significant volume of digital documentation and captured by our media team, partner journalists and emergency responders. So at Nairobi County, we have a media team that captures all this information. Apart from that, we work together with the media groups, the TV programs, and the radio stations. And also we have the Red Cross that also captures information. So we're able to have an inventory for all of them. We share that information together. So this is part of the I said, I'll do a presentation with the images so that you can understand what was happening. That is my boss, he's the Nairobi City Council governor, and he had to go on the ground to understand what was happening. So, in terms of the impact of the flooding events, there was a lot of devastating consequences. Thousands, especially, like I said, the ones on the European land, and also when you're home attending breakdown, and when you're going down to the first floor, you find you cannot even access your house, you cannot even get it because the water have submerged even your pipes and everything. So these consequences make people lose a lot of property. I would say in as much as people are living in European land, that is not that we have. And once it's gone with the waters and it's submerged and it's spoiled, it's still property for us. So, and also severe disruption of livelihoods. A lot of people had to leave the European land, whether they left it or not, we moved them. And some had to go back to their living house because everything they owned was never fixed. And also the environmental factors. So because of the unplanned urbanization, it contributed to them being vulnerable, and also the fact that the water then approached the rebellion ones, it also brought a lot about a lot of health risks and diseases. And when you go to the hospital, still, it was a mess. So we also documented in terms of, apart from just documenting what was happening, we tried to go further and document human experiences. So the audio-visual section, especially myself and my team, and the team that was capturing, we had to go to these people and talk up to them and understand how comprehensive and how, to what extent this flooding affected them. So that we can also, in as much as we were archiving the images, we also wanted to archive their stories, because some of them have been brought up there. They have no other home, that's why they're there. And moving them from there was also going to be a problem. And we got so many testimonies. Sorry, I didn't have the videos to show, but we got so many because most of them are talking in Swahili and maybe a bit complicated. So we got to understand the cost of displacement, and the county government and the national government had to chip in, and also the NGOs had to chip in and try to find out how they can at least give them some stuff to use, the blankets, the basins, the mattresses, so that they can give it to maybe start all over again. So the cost of displacement, one was the unrooted lives, families forced to abandon homes and possessions. That's what they call, like I said, that's where they call home. Some of them, like I said, were brought up there and they don't know anywhere else to go because that's their home. And you'll see that's my boss. So we had to keep working and finding out what's happening, because if you're working in a political environment like I do, you have to make sure that your data is allocated. So you have to keep working around and finding out what's happening. And also, apart from that, erased cultural ties, like I said, loss of connection to specific locations with cultural significance. So you'll find we have some tribes, like from the Sudan parts, Sudanese who are probably who have come to Kenya as refugees, and they find the Rwandaian land, the fact that they will not be able to buy land without proper identification as nationals. That's where they used to live. So a lot of them lost their ways and went back to South Africa, and South Sudan, where they also don't have homes, and their children also have been born in Kenya. So it was quite devastating for them, and also exposed vulnerability. So when you're in that state, you're quite vulnerable, and yeah, so it was a long story, and you'll find some of them, Kikuyu would go back to their homes, But there are areas like the Luos, we have different tribes in Kenya. So you'll find Luos are not able to go because their homes are very far from Nairobi. People of their homes are quite near from Nairobi, so they'll go back. But again, the impact was quite hectic for them. And here is one, they also tried to voice their issues. And when they talk about the floods, we lost everything, not just our homes, but our history. The places where our kids live were, and we celebrated our traditions, were all washed away. And here they are trying to talk to the governor to find out if they can still be given a chance to rebuild the same Victorian land. But again, the fact that we have no idea what our tomorrow, if it will still happen, it will not stop them from moving, so they have to be resettled somewhere. So the critical aspect of having archives as a tool of people use information is just beyond historical record, informing future urban planning decisions. So when we are working on the urban planning and development, these archives will be able to inform the planners. So they're giving maybe approvals to be able to inform them on is it a riparian land or is it safe for construction. Also providing sustainable development policies. We have policies that we had to review because of these situations and see how best to engage what will happen with the, when we are reviewing and see how we can change it to a point where it's able to cater for both the Kenyans and the staff, sorry, the Nairobi County. Also supporting planning adaptation strategies. So we are currently having a commission that is called Nairobi River Commission, because most of the riparian land, there's a river that cuts across Nairobi, which is about 27 kilometers. So one of the strategies that we have come up with is we are going to mitigate that situation by coming up with the same river, but making it look a bit more interesting for people to do business, but well done. So that is what the government has started working on. Also preserving community experiences for posterity. So archiving this kind of information will help us understand our past. When we look forward to our future, we'll be able to have that story to tell. That's a story. Okay, this should the riparian land bordered. You can see that is a slum. So people are trying to get out of their homes with some of being taken away by waters. A lot of cars were taken away by water because it was a lot of force. So when you're building this resilience, one of the areas that these archives support, archiving these audiovisual records is by education programs. So we are developing programs, some have been done, and through the environment department, we are trying to raise awareness about floods so that people can understand the risk behind it and how we can sustain this risk and how we can sustain the practices going forward. Also, it's going to help us have early warning systems. So we share the same information with Red Cross and also the national government and the roads sector, so that we are able to understand how do we alert just in case what it happens, because the floods were not only in the riparian land, also along the highways and in homes. So we are able to alert the people living in there on the future floods and how to maybe mitigate that before it comes. And then also alternative housing. We are coming up, the government has come up with affordable housing that is going to be able to help the people who are in the riparian land maybe afford homes that are a bit cheaper than the normal costs. So preserving narratives, the archive ensures that Nairobi experiences with displacement are preserved for future generations. By this, it honors the stories of the affected communities, provides context for environmental changes, serves as a foundation for our ongoing dialogue, and informs climate adaptation strategies. So you'll find like one of the areas that we have been trying to mitigate is the first area is where the floods, that's the river, and we had just a very weak structure for a bridge. And one of the areas the county have tried to mitigate is build that. So we have several bridges that have been worked on. Yeah. And finally, the scope of this collection, with the effort that we did, we have an estimated 1 terabyte of video footage and approximately 3,000 high resolution images, which together account for 3 gigabytes. However, you'll find some of the images were being quite duplicated, so we appraise some of them so that we can have at least a few more that are not duplicated. And then this extensive collection of visual evidence has been crucial for assessing damage, coordinating rescue efforts, and raising public awareness about the scale of the disaster. By having this event through the video, will ensure the future generations can learn and prepare for similar challenges. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Hsieh, for sharing the rest of the absolutely. Other questions from the audience? Oh, online. Yeah, so, oh, sorry, I didn't see this. Yes, please.
So what is the number? Is our number like actually a essential project? And there are about 3,000, 2,300.
Thank you. I also studied there's I'm aware that archives help. But I feel like people really think this part like say it's not part of the archive, because there's an important story from the example, and it's very hard to bring it back together. My example would be I work a lot of stuff that has to do with in the US. And also people who have pathways bio and development programs in the US. And I'm wondering if Nairobi City is very thinking in mind also really this is environmental displacement, and we're going to see a lot more of that in our lives. Is there part of your archival work that has to do with trying to tie together the stories of communities so that we remember those communities who they were, even though they're activated, and that's environmental issues. That's the first question. And the second question is, are there other countries or regions that you've looked to as examples who are also dealing with sort of environmental displacement and how they're archiving the whole story as people are pushed out of their
First, also there was one, the
last part was if you have other countries or regions, but
no, the other one was okay. Yes. Other countries, I did not have documented anything. I maybe something to think about. I would say maybe it's something to think about. Probably in West Africa. We didn't quite because we concentrated on Nairobi County because that's where they are. So probably that, unless we go to the media companies where they have an archives. But for us, we only archive what is for Nairobi County because that's where they are. And when we were doing the video recordings, because we did the interviews, then we were able to understand the communities, the different communities. So it's part of the recordings that we have on each major communities were affected. It's part of them, but then I have not yet probably with them to understand how many of each community. It's something like that.
Thank you. I thought that was really very great. And one thing that impressed me about it was how quickly the information you were saving was becoming useful to community. Stuff about how the archives are on the educational program, how they're on using for design. And so I was trying to think of other cases where information archives is being turned back around and used for fiction. And I couldn't think of any. And I was trying to think about how sometimes information gets conflicted. It's usually the information is journalists for that. So I got me thinking that a lot of the things they're doing, we've seen a lot less like journalists going out and talking to people, preserving their records, and it makes me wonder, are you working with journalists on this? And what is the relationship between records and videos you're creating and the work with journalists and that other group?
Okay, well, the journalists work for the companies, but for us, we have our own journalists who are under the governance of this, because remember, being a political environment, the governor is elected. So when we bring these own campaigns, that's when we start saying, I have done this for you, I've done this for you, I've done this for you. So they always come, every regime, every governor comes with their own media team that is going to follow what he does and implement. So that's why probably at the end of it, you'll find them talking to each other, because even when they're going for maybe occasions or where there are other political rallies, they find each other, so they're able to share information amongst themselves. My work is to archive what they can, and then also help them trying to educate the community.
Yes, please. We very sometimes, and the first thing we have to know about is the community around. We have a collection of the happy these people being part of in the 2005 2016 and India. These people here on this very several hundred miles to teaching countries. And that's where they interviewed and empowering leaders. And I mean, now, you know, really followed up on the impact of these stories and what they can find teaching about the next times and such, and these stories by what and what we're saying is in the books and how these are meant to impact. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything online? Are there any questions from team? From team? No? No. All right. Thank you very much, Sue, John, and Jesse. Thank you for the day. Learning.